ahead and get started. It's 12 noon per my clock. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Laura Johnson and I work for the Department of Forestry. This is the fourth webinar in our Waynesboro tree webinar series, replacing our in-person meeting this year. So far as this webinar series, we've learned about tree inventories and urban dendrochronology and some history of our urban forests. But today, we're going to be with some familiar faces if you've been with us for the entire series. We're going to be discussing green industry in the woods and weeds, expanding your business with woodland health services to new and existing clients. Next slide. We have one more webinar left in this series. Dr. Eric Wiseman from Virginia Tech will be joining us next Wednesday. If this is your first time joining us, this webinar is approved for one ISA, one SAF, and one VNLA CEU. There will be a questionnaire, a Qualtrics survey that pops up on your screen after the webinar ends, and you will also be receiving it via email in case it doesn't pop up like you're on your phone. So be sure to fill out that survey if you do want credit for today. We'll be submitting the CEUs tomorrow, so you have about 24 hours to fill out that survey before we submit the CEUs on behalf of you. And of course, if you can, please consider donating to Trees Virginia. The website link is on that slide. We usually, all the profits from our workshops that we typically do in person support student scholarships. And because we moved to an online format this year, we really wanted, the Trees Virginia and the board really wanted to make it available and free so people could get CEUs. But if you can donate, please consider donating to support student scholarships. Next slide. So we have two excellent and local speakers with us today. And you've been seeing a lot of Adam. He's been an amazing help for this whole webinar series, running everything in the background in addition to Ashley. But Adam is an extension agent with the Virginia Cooperative Extension. Since 2001, Adam has worked as the Forestry and Natural Resources Extension Agent serving Virginia Cooperative Extension's Northern District. It's a 28 county area from the Shenandoah Valley to Northern Virginia and branching by Fredericksburg and Charlottesville. His professional experience is in providing informal education regarding forestry and natural resources to address issues in rural, urban, and rural-urban interface areas to homeowners, landowners, professionals, decision makers, and the general public. Before his appointment, Adam served as the Northwest Pennsylvania Extension Forester with Penn State. And prior to joining Extension, he volunteered with the Peace Corps in Kenya as an agroforestry extension agent. He holds a BS degree in forestry from Purdue and an MS degree in forest resources from Penn State University. And right after, we also have another Purdue grad coming up. Joe Lehnen works for the Virginia Department of Forestry, and he did the introductions a couple weeks ago if you were able to join us. He's the forest utilization and marketing specialist. He coordinates the urban wood program for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and he has led the effort to establish the Virginia Urban Wood Group in 2017. He attained his BS degree in forestry and wildlife management from Purdue and has worked for the Virginia Department of Forestry since 1979, spending most of his career as an area forester in the Shenandoah Valley. He serves as a board member for the Virginia Urban Forest Council and is the Eastern U.S. representative for the steering committee of the Urban Wood Network. And he lives with his family in Woodstock, Virginia, near Dunkels Grove. Thank you all so much. And I will turn it over to Adam for a couple of housekeeping items, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you. So excited to do this together with another Boilermaker. There are not too many of us in Virginia, so when we get together, sorry, you're going to hear about it. For those of you who've been on, just a reminder, the Q&A, the floating bar somewhere on your screen, probably at the bottom, could be at the top, but this is where we want you to please ask your questions. And feel free to put those in at any time, and that is how we will manage the question and answer period at the end. Ashley will field those and put those to Joe and I. If you put them in the chat, that's fine, but we may lose track of them. But please do use the chat to talk to people, to have, give some reactions, whatever. We may even ask you to put in a chat on to stay engaged with the presentation. So that's all I have. Joe? You got to unmute, Joe.
There we go. Let's try that. Yeah, you don't need to see any more of me. So let's go ahead and switch screens. And Ashley, do you have my screen yet or no?
No.
Okay, hold on just for a second. Here we go. We'll get it all up here in a second. And I will go to slideshow.
Okay, it's up.
All right, come on, slideshow. There we go. All right, cool. I'm going to start the day off by giving you a little bit of background on what Adam and I are going to talk about collectively. And that is small property management in Virginia and really across the United States that can lead to big opportunities for companies that wish to venture into this area of management. A lot of people don't realize how many phone calls Adam and I get every day and all resource managers from people who have 1 tree, 2 trees, 10 trees, an acre, 2 acres. It's absolutely amazing. And they're looking to do something with their property, but they need help. And of course, we're here to try to help them, but it's been a challenge. And one of the focuses of my program over the past 3 years has been trying to develop more opportunities for these people. You know, in Virginia, we're really blessed that we have about 16 million acres of forest land, and that Virginia is 62% forested. I know a lot of my friends that I have out in California, they look at the greenness of Virginia and they're absolutely in awe, especially now, of course, with all the fires going on and the destruction that's happening in California. They truly yearn for the green of Virginia. But the green canopy that you see in this picture does not necessarily denote, the true story of Virginia's forest. Beneath the treetops in a lot of places are scenarios just like this, where instead of red maple and white pine growing in the understory, we're growing houses in the understory. And very large pieces of property are being divided and divided and divided into smaller and smaller parcels. And consequently, the traditional management of forest management in the Commonwealth just does not quite suit and fit into the scenario that continues to evolve here in the Commonwealth and really across the United States. The ever-dividing landscape that we're faced with truly presents interesting challenges, because what once used to be unbroken forest land where a lot of traditional forestry could take place is now all of a sudden very fragmented, and a lot of people are living there. And as you can see, on this really cool slide that Adam let me borrow, there are these areas in between the houses. And those are the areas now that, we are managing or expected to manage, with still trying to do it as a traditional forestry model. And that necessarily doesn't work. The property lines of these houses may come out and join in the middle of this little patch of woods, or this patch of woods might actually be a common area for this wooded development. In either case, people are wanting to do something out in the woods, but they're just not quite sure how to go about it. So here's a couple nuggets of knowledge for you to take away today. In Virginia, 70% of woodland owners have tracts from 1 to 10 acres in size. Foresters call these folks the 1 to 10ers because they're the folks that are usually most difficult to serve with a traditional forestry model of the type of work that we used to do. That equates to about 856,000 acres of forest land, or 9% of Virginia's family forested acres. If you look a little bit closer to the urban areas and maybe the suburbs and the exurbs, nationwide, there's about 130 million acres of urban forest. And here's the snippet that I want you to remember today, is that more wood is removed from our urban areas than from all of the national forests combined. And that's really remarkable when you think about it. I mean, you think about the millions of acres that are contained in national forest land, and probably far, far, far more, obviously, than the urban forest, but yet more wood is taken out of the urban areas for various reasons. Living in the woods in 2020 sort of looks something like this, with a house, a little bit of what I call domesticated area, or the inner circle around the house, where a lot of activity goes on, where management goes on in the form of mowing or landscaping or recreating. And then there is the world beyond that, the world beyond the yard. And the people who live in these areas, they like the world beyond the yard, but they're not exactly sure what they're going to do out there in the world beyond the yard. They want to do something with it. They want to use it more, but they either don't have the equipment, obviously, to go out there and do something. I mean, after all, the John Deere rider mower is not something that you'd want to take out yonder. So consequently, you know, they have questions and concerns, and they really turn to resource professionals and also to service providers to help them attain their visions for the property. Here are some of the top priorities for the 2020 forest dweller. First of all is aesthetics. They want the yard to look good. Well, they want the forest to look good too. They are very concerned about forest health and individual tree health. They are very focused on that. And if things look a little bit off, they are really some of the first people that we're going to call and say, hey, you know, I've got a problem with my tree and I need to know what to do about it. They love wildlife as long as the wildlife doesn't eat everything and doesn't hurt the kids, which, you know, of course, can be a challenge if you're trying to manage for wildlife on a small property. And finally, of course, is recreation. And most of the recreation is passive recreation, whether it's spending time in the woods, whether it's having a campfire ring out there, whether it might be building a trail. And this has really hit home during these days of COVID, where people, you know, at first, you know, we were asked to stay home, and then a lot of folks are still staying home. So recreational opportunities on their own property have become vitally important during these times in which we live. When you look at a slide like this, you know, if you're in the business of managing natural landscape, this just screams opportunity. If you look at those trees, you know, and you think of, okay, what's there that might need to be done? Well, first of all, you know, chances are there's going to be soil compaction from the building of that structure, and some of those trees are going to tap out. Secondly, you see that, you know, surrounding the house, you know, there are many small trees scattered among the bigger trees. They're not going to last. Natural selection is going to thin them out, and they're going to need to be taken down. And then if you look off to the back of the property, you'll see more acres and acres of pine forest, which means, you know, there's opportunities for fuel mitigation and fuel reduction to protect this structure. So when people build in the woods like this, they just build opportunity for some business to come and service their needs. There's always wonderfully invasives to control too. The one thing about invasives that I always say is they're kind of a gift that keeps on giving. And that's from the perspective of those who are in the invasive control business. If you look at this slide of autumn olive, which is one of the most prolific invasives that we happen to have, there's about 110 opportunities, yes, I counted them, 110 opportunities on those first two top layers of branches in the form of autumn olive berries, which of course are going to be either eaten by birds or eaten by bear, and then pooped across yonder landscape, sprouting more little autumn olives. So yeah, you know, invasives are the type of plant that just present opportunities on a daily basis. The same, of course, is true for Tree of Heaven. Tree of Heaven is male and female. This happens to be a female one with the seeds that are ready to take flight and scatter across the landscape. But not only do the Ailanthus grace us with their seeds, they also tend to sprout from the stump, and they put up root shoots when you cut them off. So Ailanthus is indeed a tree that's hard to control, and it takes time to control. It's not necessarily a one and done situation. The same thing is true for stilt grass. You know, it's kind of interesting, but I've been to a lot of properties where we'll be walking around with a property owner and they'll say, look at this beautiful green grass I have in my forest. And you know, it's kind of, they look at you crestfallen when you have to tell them, well, that's an invasive species that's choking everything out. So not only do these invasives give business opportunities, they also offer educational opportunities so that we are able to teach these homeowners, you know, that not every green plant is good in yonder woods. And when you're dealing with invasive species control, you know, there's opportunities to be very creative. I mean, let's face it, we're not asking all of you out there who provide services to become herders of goats. But on the other hand, how fun could it be to have a goat herd controlling the invasives next to your woodland home? I mean, let's face it, the kids would absolutely love it. Hemlock woolly Adelgid, of course, is also a pest that is persistent in the environment. And again, you know, with treatments for hemlock woolly Adelgid, it's not something that is necessarily a one-time application. You have to return and apply every 2 or 3 years and make sure that the hemlock is still okay and good to go. A lot of folks in today's time are also looking to reduce the maintenance time that they spend on their zero turns. Now, you know, he looks like a really happy guy, but after a while, he probably gets tired of mowing that 5 acres of grass that came with that beautiful house on the top of the hill that looks, you know, across the valley or the landscape. And, you know, it's time for him to think about doing something else. And that, of course, is, or it could be, creating a forest. And when you look at this picture, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, so Joe here is asking me to go out and plant trees, and, you know, then what? Well, if you look at this, this is not a one and done. This is like a 10-year commitment, or it could be a 10-year commitment between the landowner and the service provider. After all, there's invasives that are going to come in there that need to be sprayed. The grass probably needs to be also controlled around each of the tree installations so that it doesn't overwhelm the trees and that you get better growth. There's going to be tree shelters that need fixing. There's going to be tree shelters that are either damaged by deer or bear that might need replacing. You might even get to a point where you can do some early pruning for the landowner on some of these trees. So really, you know, we're talking about a multi-year contract on some of these areas where they want to plant trees in order to ensure that they have a successful young forest. Another option, of course, instead of mowing all those acres, is creating a meadow. You know, one of the most critical things these days is that we give our bees plenty of places that they can find pollen and nectar in order to survive. You know, pollinators are on the brink of a really bad future. And so creating a meadow like this is not only beautiful, but it also serves an important purpose for taking care of the pollinators that are so critical for our food supply for we humans. Burning services, of course, are an interesting adventure, and, you know, one that you just don't go out and do. At least maybe I should say, please just don't go out and do this. Make sure that you enroll in the Virginia Prescribed Burn Managers course and get some good experience. Well, burning services are certainly a unique service to offer some of the landowners that you might be taking on these smaller properties. Trail construction, of course, gives access into that place beyond the yard, that place that people want to go, but you know, there might be a snake out there, or there might be some other things, you know, that I really don't want to mess with, but a trail gives them a nice defined path. So trail construction is also, you know, a wonderful service to be able to offer these people who want to recreate on their own property. Felling a tree, you know, even for us experienced fellers like Adam and Ashley and me and Laura, felling a tree can be dicey at times. And when people look up at this big tree that they have that needs to come down, they want to be sure to be able to call an expert. So felling a tree is an important service to offer most anybody, because the worst thing that you could do is to incorrectly fell the tree, like Uncle Sidney did. And that Aunt Ethel wonders, I told him not to do this. Disaster response is also something that a lot of folks have gotten into over the years. And this is a slide of an area that was devastated by a tornado. And this area was a wooded subdevelopment. And there was a company that actually spent 2 weeks in here just clearing the trees off of the houses, not working on the areas in between the houses, but just working around the houses. So disaster response is certainly, you know, an area to consider getting into. One of the problems that we have had over the years in traditional forestry is we've got a bunch of square pegs, but more and more there's more round holes out there that we're trying to fit the square pegs into. You know, when people who have an acre or 2 acres of land call and they want to do something like thin their forest or improve their forest for health, or maybe take down a tree, we can't send them one of these, nor can we send them one of these. So consequently, you know, we have to rethink our thinking to serve these smaller landowners. Now, luckily, a lot of the folks in the green industry are all ready to serve. A lot of them have skid steers that only need to be modified with this tree shear that could serve a lot of purposes and easily remove trees in very tight situations. The right size equipment is the key. A lot of folks in the green industry already have trailers. This one was modified with a small boom so that they could load logs. And again, you know, it's easily maneuverable and smaller so that it can get into tighter places. If you're going to do logs like that, then there's opportunities for collaboration with local wood providers and local wood businesses. A lot of folks who are in the arboriculture industry who do remove trees from people's property and around their houses, they don't necessarily chunk all of the logs into firewood or chip the entire tree. Some of these goes to local wood using industries to create beautiful island tops like you see here with this live edge island top. Forestry mulchers have become an incredibly useful tool, not only for invasive species control, but also for trail construction. And as you can see, this one fits on the front end of a skid steer, just like the tree shear harvester did. So in the end, you know, what you probably want to look at is offering a suite of services. Things like invasive species control and tree planting, meadow establishment and trail construction, wildlife habitat development, and also forest thinning. But the best news of the day for all of this is maintenance. That's right. We all know in the natural resource world that, you know, nature does not stand still. Even though you put in the trail, even though you put in the meadow, nature is going to continue to grow and continue to evolve, and there is going to be need for maintenance, which extends contracts and extends commitments, you know, to the landowners that you serve. So that, of course, is an important aspect of this whole thing. So here are the takeaways for today. You know, without a doubt on these smaller properties, I mean, opportunities abound. There are just so many opportunities for people, you know, who are in the service provider industry. Like I said, extension folks and forestry folks get calls all the time, and we're looking to send, you know, our people who are requesting help you know, the help that they need. Offer a suite of services, but on the other hand, make sure that what you do makes sense for your business model. Seek collaborations. Like I said, if you're removing logs from an area, you know, there is probably a local wood business in your area that would love to have those logs. And last but not least, embrace social media. I can't tell you over the past 3 years, the number of businesses that I have dealt with, you know, who have used social media, both Instagram and Facebook, to promote the projects that they do. And they have, you know, hundreds and thousands of followers, you know, that follow what they do and the projects that they're involved in. And, you know, it's free FaceTime. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. And it's a great way to advertise your business and also the services that you offer. Okay, so a quick commercial. You know, up until this point, we are very thankful that the U.S. Forest Service Southern Region provides a laser grant for the work that we do as far as our small parcel service providers and urban wood. And we certainly want you to keep those questions coming. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Adam Downing. Adam, you are up.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Excellent as always. Love working with you, although it always makes me a little wondering how well my presentation will go over, because you're such a great presenter. Thank you for laying the excellent framework and basis for that. And folks, there's a lot of different types of people. We got over 120 folks on. The next part of this really is oriented toward those who are in the green industry professionally speaking. But if you're a tree steward or just an interested person, then think about how you might be able to share some of this opportunity that Joe's been talking about with some others perhaps. So we've been getting chided since the beginning of this series for how long our title is. So I've made it as long as possible and as small as possible at the same time. And just to point out though that we just wanted that reputation, but no, training and tools. That's what this next part is going to focus on. And Joe and I, along with others, have been involved in this partnership, the Woods in Your Backyard partnership. And that has resulted in 2 publications. The one we're going to focus on today is the one on the right, the Woodland Health Practices Handbook. But it was preceded by the Woods in Your Backyard, which was for small acreage owners, sort of a do-it-yourself manual. They read it, learn some content, get a foundation, and develop a plan. What we learned in doing that was that they wanted to connect with the resource professionals. And most of them, when they did connect, they connected with someone from the green industry. Not necessarily a professional forester, not necessarily a wildlife biologist, although all those were suggested along with the green industry. But as Joe said, that's who they're already working with. And so that really is what led to this Woodland Health Practices Handbook, which is oriented toward the green industry. So I mentioned that this is a partnership. The partnership is with the University of Maryland Extension, Jonathan Kays, who has led the initiative, both initiatives for both books, myself with the Extension, Virginia Extension. Penn State has been involved, as well as Forest for the Bay, and Virginia Department of Forestry, I'm proud to say they're the only state forestry agency in all of it who has been involved in both projects. And Joe has been really instrumental in this recent one and as an author in this handbook. So let's take a look inside of this a little bit. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you every page. I'm not just want to orient you a little bit to what it is. It is full color. There are 10 authors. There are 5 chapters, but there's one purpose, and that is to present green industry professionals with some of the tools to perhaps take advantage of these opportunities. We believe there are new business opportunities. To what extent and to what they'll pay, we don't know. This is a new arena, so it's going to take an entrepreneurial spirit to really tap into this. But there are some people who are doing it. And the objective on the natural resource professional end of things, like Joe and I and Laura and Molly and Ashley and others who have been involved in this delivery of this program, is that we want better systems out there. So we manage forested landscapes in part to produce fiber, but also to have good water quality, good wildlife habitat. And so on these smaller acreages, the same systems are in play. And so we also, along the way, want to inform landowners, you as green industry professionals can be part of that, and to increase that resource utilization. As Joe said, there's a lot of wood that comes out of urban areas. There's also a lot of wood that comes out of these small acreages that are not utilized. And so that can be increased. So there are 5 chapters. These are the 5. And so the first one, we'll go through each one of these just briefly, is woodland ecology. And succession really is the key on what we work in terms of forestry. Forests are, part of that successional process. So we'll take a quick look at that. And then we have this tool called the Woodland, the Woodland Health Assessment Checklist. I'm going to show you this in a few slides coming up too. But this is actually just a very simple tool to kind of break this process down into simple steps. Communicating your message to clients. So this is a kind of a new area for many green industries. So how do you communicate? How do you connect with clients on this? What are some land care practices? Joe mentioned several. And so the book spends quite a bit of time on the land care practices, kind of the how to do these different things, and then create a plan. Because this is a long-term endeavor, a plan is a very useful resource. So this picture in the lower right-hand corner is another one that kind of captures the opportunity. You've got all these houses, you've got a lot of yard with these, and you have some woodland. And in a real simplistic view of things, we're looking for opportunities to take where there's a lot of grass, a lot of yard, and decrease that and add natural area to that. And where there's already natural area, to better manage that. So that's kind of the two sides of the coin here with the opportunity. So just a little teaser here on the ecological principles, and that is succession. So I took these pictures a number of years ago in the Piedmont of Virginia, different places, but this is kind of what it would look like if we go fast forward from yard, or in this case a field, and just stopped mowing. All right, you get some trees popping up. You guys know this, some broom sedge, some shrubs, in this case cedar and some other shrubs, probably some invasive species. Here's that opportunity. The shrubs get bigger, some trees start coming up, some hardwood trees, and then it starts to get to be a real tangled mess. People don't like how this looks, although a communication point here is the value of this for wildlife. And so if wildlife is an objective of your client, then being able to talk through that. Here, this is what foresters would call stem exclusion, where there's very little light reaching the ground and not much coming up then from the ground. And then we get into what's called the pole stand. Joe probably recognizes this guy in this picture, a long-time retired Department of Forestry research forester. And then we get into what we would generally think of as a mature forest. So that's succession, going from a yard to a forest. It takes time, but it does happen, right? Every time we mow the grass, we're setting back succession. We're maintaining it at that early successional stage. And then we have old growth. Within that whole realm of succession, we also have forest stand development. And so these next few slides are actually taken with the same kind of camera, lens, aperture, angle length, focal length, all that camera stuff from the same point over the course of several decades. This happens to be in the Allegheny Plateau of Pennsylvania. And so there's a lot of cherry coming up in this picture. So I'm just going to scroll through these and probably not say much if I can keep myself from saying much. But in 1927, there was a clear cut. In 1928, kind of another clear cut, if you will, to get everything off. At that stage in the industry, they were doing chemical wood cuts. So even little stuff they went back and got to process into wood chemicals resources. So here we are, 1928, and the next few slides are going to be 10 years apart. And just watch how a stand develops. So this is essentially succession within a forest. 10 years ahead. These trees are probably 4 to 6 inches, or maybe 8 inches in diameter. There's a person to give you a little bit of scale now. one thing to notice is that there are fewer trees. As the stand develops, there are fewer trees because a bigger tree needs more space, right? I think that's the last picture. Yeah. So in the chat, which of these is reversing? So let's take the picture on the left. Is this reversing or accelerating succession? A little bit of interaction here. In the chat, put down which picture. Just type in reversing or accelerating for the picture on the left. And then the picture on the right. Left is accelerating, left is reversing. Okay, so we have some disagreement. Very good. All right, so as you consider that, and Joe has already mentioned the opportunity here. Let's start with the picture on the right. This is accelerating succession. By planting a tree and stopping mowing, what the picture in the right shows, you are allowing succession to move forward. When you plant a tree, you actually accelerate that. Trees will come in on their own, or you can plant specific trees. The picture on the left is reversing succession. In this case, a clear cut. Anytime you harvest a tree, you're reversing succession in that little spot, or if it's a larger patch, then you're reversing it for that area. This is basically all we can do in forestry is manage successional stages. We do that for wildlife habitat. We do that for certain goods and services. We do that for fiber coming off of the land. And so it's somewhat simple in some ways, but more complicated in others. All right, let's move on to chapter 2. This is the chapter that gets into the woodland health assessment tool, which is a process or a tool, if you will, to eat the elephant. So if you've not worked in the forestry realm before, if you're in, either a pretty strict arborist or in the green industry, then you step into these woods, you're like, well, looks like woods. You know, how do we start this this thing? So this checklist is a tool to assess the health, which is a key word for this audience. Joe has already mentioned that. They are really keen on forest health. And so the checklist, if you go in, so these are the 4 sections to evaluate the woodland diversity and composition, the woodland structure, the habitat value, and then various site level considerations. This is what it looks like inside, where you basically say, is it a high concern area or a low concern area? So let's just take a look at one up close. General tree health. Do we have poor form, low vigor? Then that's going to be a higher concern. If the trees seem to look good, well-formed crowns, good growth, the vigor looks good, then it's a low concern area. And corresponding to tree health would be management options. So if it's a low concern area, then we would think about things like thinning to release certain trees from competition and remove certain trees that maybe are damaged. So fairly simple. And then that is a tool to help communicate that to your client. And with that, you need to know what their interests are and how to speak with them about their interests and achieving their goals and objectives without the jargon that we all have in whatever industry we're in. And then that checklist can be, is meant to help do that. There's a part of the book that talks about words to avoid and words to use. So I don't know, probably a lot of you remember not too long ago, it seemed like green was the word. Now green is not the word, but sustainable is, environmentally friendly is. And this is from studies that have been done with society. Chapter 4 is land care practices. I love this picture. It doesn't, I just want to use the picture, but so there are 2 parts to land care practices. And the one part is from lawn to natural area. You get that, and mow is less, right? So planting or relying on natural succession, or the occasional mowing for meadows and such. And then part 2 is improving the existing habitat. Some of the things that Joe has already mentioned about wildlife openings, trails, invasive species. It might also include managing riparian buffers. The chosen tree management, that's picking a tree that is important for whatever objectives and releasing that, giving it space to grow. And then the final chapter is simply a template and a process to put this into some sort of a written plan that is meant to be flexible, but it articulates what the goals are, describes the property, summarizes the assessment checklist, and provides recommendations. And of course, a map. A map is part of every plan. So then that's something you work with the client to develop, and then that is a reference for both you and the client on what you're going to be doing going forward, and attaching some dollars to it. So the big question is, will they pay? And the big answer is yes, no, we don't know. We're looking forward to hearing from you on that. I know that some people are making some money off of this. Adding it to your services as green industry professionals seems like a pretty safe way to explore this. But we do know that people spend a lot of money on bird watching. This relates to that. We know that people spend a lot of money on lawn care. Well, this might also relate to that. They want to take care of their space. And as Joe said, we do get a lot of calls for this. And so one of the resources that Joe has developed online through the Urban Wood Network is a list of people who do provide these kinds of services. And that has been great. So that when people call and want something, we're like, well, don't know, good luck. We can actually send them to a list that has those types of people with different services. And then, you know, this is actually an old slide, but it's probably even more relevant for 2020 of people trying to get back to the land, living local, moving out of the city, all these sort of things. So, and Joe also mentioned that homeowner associations, so that may be an opportunity rather than just individuals, and also municipal parks. So you all are already in the neighborhood. Opportunity for you to meet some of this need and demand, and we hope that you will, because then that gives us an opportunity to see things improve. Some of the training you might consider, some of you on the call are already certified arborists or licensed pesticide applicators. Sharp logger, that's not a certification, but it's a credential that might help expand your network, if nothing else. And then attending various classes that we offer through extension or through forestry that are oriented towards landowners, but would certainly be a very good way for green industry to kind of bone up on some of these things. And so I mentioned the network. There's a lot of people that could be part of this network. It's not necessarily you doing it all, but it's you having these connections with different people to help get things done, but working through you. Joe has already kind of talked about who these potential clients are. There's some research that was done in 2005 by a couple professors down at Virginia Tech. Basically, they're not adverse to management. Okay, that's good. They're do-it-yourselfers, but a lot of them are too busy and want to hire it out. And a lot of them have disposable income. And as Joe mentioned, they're concerned with amenity protection and ecological qualities more so than making money off of their land. Are they willing to cut trees? Well, for timber, maybe not. But if it's for health reasons, they might do that. For scenic reasons, some of them are already doing that. So cutting trees is not something we typically think of with a 2-acre woodlot in someone's backyard, but they might be willing to do that. And so then you might have an opportunity there for that raw material to be of some value as well. Willingness to do these other things, such as using herbicides, testing, soil testing, writing a plan. So the varying levels of interest or willingness to engage in that, but the point here with this slide is that there is some willingness, a decent amount. So just to wrap that up, the question of how much or if they will pay, I think that verdict is still out there to some extent, but we do have more and more people jumping in on this opportunity. So to what extent it's niche and maybe quickly filled, we don't know, but we hope that there will be more people because we think there's still an opportunity. I want to wrap up with a slide that kind of summarizes kind of the big picture of what this is about. It's not about, a planting bed or designing a trail or helping certain trees. All of those are pieces to facilitate a better functioning system. So from the resource perspective, that's what this is about. You as service providers will be focused in on certain things, but keep in mind that it's all part of a bigger system. And I think that that has a lot of value in communicating this kind of stuff with your clients. And just as an example, here is a slide. So Jonathan Kays has been the project lead on this. His house is the one on the left. His yard used to look just like the one on the right. How did he transform it like that? He stopped mowing and managed the invasives as they came along. That's it. Now he's got a forest, and some people would see more value in that. And he certainly has some privacy and some amenities that the neighbor doesn't have. And so this can happen, and it can actually happen faster than we might think in terms of getting increasing that natural area in a residential lot. And just a final shout out for an opportunity we have coming up. If you're interested in this, Joe and I and our colleagues from Pennsylvania and Maryland will be offering a 4-part webinar series. There is a fee associated with it, and the registration for that, for those of you who are in Virginia, is through the Trees Virginia website. And of course, there will be credits, but you will get a copy of this book with your registration fee, and an option to get the woods in your backyard, the one for homeowners, landowners as well. And with that, we've concluded our presentation.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Joe. Those were great presentations today. Learned a lot. So we have a few questions. Adam, I found the woods in my backyard on the Virginia Cooperative Extension website, but could you go over options for getting these 2 books?
Yeah, thank you. This one is coming soon. It's in process. Actually, Virginia Tech printed these, and they're going to be available for purchase through Extension's website soonly. I don't know how soon, but fairly soon. If you want a copy of this book, guaranteed, then sign up for the October class that we're doing, and you will get one sent to you in the mail.
Sounds good. So it's something to look forward to, sounds like. Go to the class in October, and otherwise you have to wait.
Well, I don't know. They may be available for purchase by then as well. I suspect they will.
Hopefully so.
But what better context to get the book and the training, right?
Correct. Joe, this question's for you. When they were asking, could you go over some of the services that can be offered again? I think that was one of your last couple slides.
Yeah, sure, Ashley. I think the services that I had listed were invasive species control and tree planting, meadow establishment, trail construction, wildlife habitat development, and forest thinning. And of course, I think I also mentioned prescribed burning, controlled burning as another service. So, you know, there's really several that you can venture off into. You may not want to do all of them, but maybe 1 or 2 would certainly suit your business model.
Thank you, Joe. So I guess this one could be for either Adam or Joe, or both of y'all can answer. Do y'all keep a database of professionals to refer landowners to when they call for assistance?
Yes, we do. In fact, let me pop this up here. I saw that question, so I kind of worked on this slide. And let me see if I can I go ahead and share a screen real quick, Ashley?
Should be able to.
All right. Let me do that for you. This is the place to go. It is the urban.
It's still showing you. Oh, okay. You're good.
Yeah,
sorry.
there we go. It's the Urban and Small Woodlot Business Directory. We try to make the address easy to remember. It's www.vaurbanwoodhelp.org, www.vaurbanwoodhelp.org, and that will take you to a directory that contains about 165 different businesses right now. Some of them are involved in land management, invasive species control. Some are portable sawmillers. So a whole suite of different businesses and service providers to help out with these smaller properties.
That's great to know, Joe. Thank you. So this is more for Adam. It was on one of your slides, Adam. You referred to places of monoculture, and they're wondering if you're referring to tree farms.
I don't remember saying monoculture. Let's see here. Can you read the question again?
Yeah, they're saying, what is the place of monoculture? Is it tree farms?
So tree farm means a lot of different things to different people, but planted pines are a single species as a planting. The forest of planted pines is far from the monoculture. There's a wide variety of plants that are also growing in that same place in the understory, and oaks that start coming up through. So I'm sorry, I don't remember what I said to better answer that.
I think hopefully they'll ask another question if that didn't suffice. So sounds good to me. So this could be for either Adam or Joe. What are the concerns about providing the various services regarding land disturbance laws in Virginia? And they're also asking if this is silviculture, who regulates water quality protection?
Go for it, Adam.
Well,
I'll take it. Go ahead, you go for it.
No, as the state forestry agency that has some regulatory oversight, and since that question was asked by one of your colleagues, it's yours.
Oh, thanks, buddy. I do appreciate that. Well, in relation to land disturbing, it all depends. Let's face it, it depends on your locality, and it also depends on your property owners association. That has a big consideration into it all too. That you may not be able to go out there in your given little chunk of woods and put in a trail with with a mechanized piece of equipment. So you certainly have to check your local regulations first. Most important, and we tell people this all the time. When we're dealing with landowners, where they have a 20-acre lot or a 2-acre lot, check with your local ordinances, check with your local covenants for your subdivision to make sure that, you can do this. And secondly, what denotes a silvicultural activity? Theoretically, if there's a commercial harvest, and I think that's the key, a commercial harvest that takes logs away, then it's a silvicultural activity, and the water quality laws apply, and all that good stuff. It's going to be a little bit of a gray area between what is determined as to be a commercial harvest and what a tree care company comes in and removes a few trees that might need removing. So that's something that would have to be administratively addressed in each locality or each area of the state.
Anything to add, Adam?
No, I think that was a great answer.
Yep. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
There's a question about, this might be what you already referred to, Joe. They're asking about a list of loggers who do, and I'm not quite sure what they're referring to. Low impact on small acreage?
Sure. A lot of the folks that we have in the directory who are listed as being forest land managers for the smaller landowners, they are low impact. They specialize in this type of work. I think there is even maybe at least one forest harvester in there who uses horses. But of course, he doesn't travel too far from his home range. So, it's not like he's a statewide operation. But, most of the people that are in the directory do harvest trees in very low impact ways because, they realize and we realize that the big equipment that I showed you in the 2 slides is not going to make it. And you know, it makes sense because, you know, traditional loggers and tree harvesters, you know, they have economies of scale where they need acres of land in order to make the harvest profitable to them, and they can't even afford to move that big equipment onto 2 acres, 5 acres, maybe even 10 acres. So the people who are in the directory, you know, again, are they sort of specialize in these smaller tracts, and that's where we try to direct the people to.
So this question is an interesting one. This is a newer pest, it seems like. So they're asking about the Asian jumping worms and whether it's an issue in the woodlands of Virginia.
You know, I've been interested in finding out. I know some other parts of the country, non-native worms have become a serious pest in woodlands, where they've basically eaten all the detritus from the forest floor, and it's a serious pest. I've not heard of it being an issue in Virginia. I hope it stays that way. I don't know how you send chickens out in the woods. I don't know what you do with a worm problem. But has anyone else heard of anything like that?
No, I haven't. That's a new pest on me.
We do have non-native worms here, but not detrimental, I guess.
So this question is for Adam. They're saying you spoke about the diverse forests and succession. I believe you covered this a little bit in the tree farms already, but they're wondering about risk of loss to insect pests or other kind of disease issues.
Yeah, so there certainly is a risk. The fewer species, the smaller diversity you have, the risk is greater. And probably the best example is that when streets were lined with elm trees, and then the Dutch elm disease came through, and what happened? The streets were no longer lined with elm trees because that was the only thing there. And so diversity is always going to be better. In the case of planted pine, a well-managed forest typically has historically had a small issue with, back up a little bit. A well-managed pine forest is at lower risk of wide-scale damage to insect or disease issues. And that's true with any forest type too. That's not to say that some new thing couldn't be right around the corner on the next shift that wipes something out. But so diversity is always a safer bet. There is a downside to that from a management and economics perspective. So the planted pine is attractive on larger scales because it's easy to manage and the profit is better and quicker turn.
Thank y'all. That's all the questions right now. And it looks like it's a good time it's close to 1 anyway. So any final words?
We just want to go ahead, Adam.
No, this is fun. Thank you all for joining, for sticking with us. Joe, I've enjoyed presenting with you. Thank you, Ashley and Laura, for helping. And last words for you, Joe.
We certainly thank everybody for being with us today, from Virginia down to Georgia up to Massachusetts. It's been great, certainly has. Privilege for both Adam and I, and we hope you all have a good rest of the week and be safe.
Yep. Thank y'all.
Bye.